And we're live. Welcome back to the show, everybody. It's the MongoDB podcast live. And my name is Michael Lin. I'm a developer advocate at MongoDB. So glad you're joining us today. Got an exciting conversation. We're going to talk about integration between MongoDB Atlas and AWS IAM for authentication. Talk about securing your applications, securing access to the infrastructure that you use to build your applications. We've got some special guests today. I am in Austin today. I typically speak to you from the East Coast of the United States, but today I'm in the southern part of the United States in Austin, Texas, staying at my colleague Karen Walmay's house. You might recognize the background if you've seen Karen do a live stream. So as you come into the stream, let me know what you're excited to learn about, what you know about IAM. Are you using it today? Are you using MongoDB Atlas? Let me know where you're coming from. Where in the world are you? It'd be great to hear folks talk about where they're from. Good morning, Francisco. Good morning, Shayansh Mishra. It's great to have you joining us from wherever you are in the world. We're going to get right to it shortly, just waiting for the stream to warm up a little bit. Wait for folks to arrive. Sometimes it takes a little bit for folks to jump in. I'm not sure what you mean, Balu required vendor code. I don't know what that is. A very good morning to you, Goldie Yadav. Goldie, where are you joining us from? India for Suman. All right. And you use it for web development. Outstanding. Awesome. Welcome, Francisco. It's great to have you here. Okay. This is fun. So we are getting a number of people in the stream. I'm so excited. Good morning from India to the US. Thank you, whoever that is. LinkedIn user that's not logged in. Once again, my name is Michael Lin. I run the MongoDB podcast. If you're interested in learning about data, software development techniques, frameworks, languages, approaches to development, how you can become a more effective developer, please check out the MongoDB podcast on all podcast networks. It's on Google, Spotify, Apple Podcast. There's some great new features on the Spotify player. We just started to roll out polls. So if you're enjoying an episode and you take a look at your Spotify player, you're going to see a poll. Please take the time to interact. Let us know what you think about those questions, about what you think about the podcast. So let's get into it. We're just about at time. I usually wait about 4 minutes to get into it. We've got some really great guests today. I'm so excited to be working for the first time on a live stream with my colleague, Megha Aurora. Megha, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Michael.
It's great to be working with you on a live stream. Where in the world are you, Megha?
I am in Hyderabad, India, and I am also pretty much excited to be on my first live with you.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's great. And so we're going to be talking about IAM today and integration with MongoDB Atlas. And I understand we're going to bring in someone else. How did you meet Abhishek? We're going to bring him into the stream shortly. How do you know Abhishek?
So we met on LinkedIn, and since our roles were similar, so that is how we started talking, and then we explored like, okay, what are the possible integrations between MongoDB Atlas and AWS? So that is where we got an idea. Okay, we can do some series wherein we can, counter the security vectors, threat vectors, one by one.
Great. Well, without further ado, let's bring in Mr. Abhishek Gupta, Principal Developer Advocate at AWS.
Hello,
welcome.
Folks. How are you doing?
Good afternoon. Good evening. Where are you in the world, Mr. Gupta?
I'm in New Delhi, India. And the weather has turned surprisingly well today. Actually, we had some showers like an hour back in the evening. It was surprising. So some relief from the heat there. I'm not sure about Hyderabad. I don't know how hot it is right now. But then, something for me to cheer about for sure in New Delhi. Yeah. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Yeah. No, it's great. It's great to have you. I'm really excited to get this kicked off. And I'm going to turn the conversation over to Megha. We're going to be covering some specifics about integration between MongoDB Atlas and AWS. And I'm looking forward to learning. So I'll be asking questions on behalf of the software developers and DevOps practitioners that are tuning in. I'll be trying to ask them questions from those point of views. But if you've got questions and you're tuning into the stream, you can ask them in the stream. I'm going to keep them until I find a good place for a break. We may end up waiting till halfway to get some of the questions answered. I don't want to break the flow. I know that Megha and Abhishek have prepared quite a bit of really good content, but I want to just say one thing. We're going to have a trivia contest. I want to give away some MongoDB podcast t-shirts. Yeah. So if you're interested in winning a t-shirt, I know it's a little thing, but I love swag. I love good swag, and this is good swag. So stick around. About halfway through, we're going to ask you a question. We'll give you some time to think about the question. It's going to be a multiple choice, might be something you find easy, and then we'll pick a couple of winners at random for each of the questions. So stay tuned for that. And with that, Megha, tell us what we're going to talk about today around IAM and Atlas.
Sure. So when we do authentication from MongoDB Atlas, we have multiple ways. We have Scram SHA, which is your password and username authentication. And then we have X509 certificates as well. But then let's say if you are totally based out on AWS and you are using AWS IAM to authenticate your other AWS offerings, or maybe you have a polyglot instance where you are getting data from different sources. So if you want to get data from MongoDB Atlas, you shouldn't be dealing with username and password, which adds a different kind of security threat separately for that.
Okay.
So that is how you can use the AWS IAM to authenticate to MongoDB Atlas as well. So that is where the discussion is around. And maybe Abhishek, you want to add on something top of it? You can add.
Yeah, absolutely. So I love data. I love databases. I work a lot with them. Serverless as well as Golang happens to be my favorite programming language. So I kind of combined this thing, and I was recently working on something that involved AWS Lambda and MongoDB Atlas. So obviously, I set up a MongoDB Atlas cluster on AWS, which was super simple, by the way. Kudos to you folks. And I was able to connect to it like Megha mentioned, using username and password as credentials. And I was able to get the job done. But what I was working with was relatively simple, at least at that point, and it had a smaller scope. So like I said, this worked out well for me. But obviously for customers, they tend to build bigger and complex stuff, and they tend to combine multiple AWS services to solve their business problems. So in addition to MongoDB Atlas, perhaps they would want to use Amazon S3 for object storage, or maybe their application needs asynchronous messaging component. For that, they might pull in things like Amazon SQS or SNS. Irrespective of where you have deployed your application in AWS, irrespective of the compute platform or runtime, the best practice is really to use something like AWS IAM to securely communicate with these native services, which I was just talking about, native AWS services like S3 or SQS and things of that nature. So there is literally one way of doing things, and it kind of keeps things very, very simple. But in this case, the thing I was working on, I had to manage the credentials for MongoDB Atlas separately. Store it elsewhere. I did it in AWS Secrets Manager. And like I said, it's okay for smaller projects, but it kind of becomes a hassle when you're working on something bigger. But now I know better. So when I had started this off, I wasn't aware of that there are better solutions out there, and there is. And like Megha was alluding to, she's in a very good position to talk about it and educate our audience a bit more on this, right?
Yeah, so while you were talking, I presented my screen, and this is what exactly you were talking about, I guess. So this is where we have multiple offerings of AWS being authenticated using AWS IAM, but MongoDB Atlas is getting authenticated using maybe Scram SHA or X509 certificates or some LDAP. So that is where the problem exists. If you have a lot of offerings and a lot of other databases in picture, wherein you have a complex architecture and you have to manage a separate set of credentials for just MongoDB Atlas, right?
Yep.
So if you can go to this from that, if you see this green line, so this is like a separate kind of credentials for authenticating to MongoDB Atlas. But if we have same kind of authentication mechanism throughout the application, it becomes very easy. It removes the overhead to manage any separate set of credentials. It removes the security threat vector as well, and it becomes easy to maintain and manage. And using AWS IAM, we can very well use the AWS environment variables, and that can have that rotating token. Maybe Abhishek can guide more on
Yeah,
that. Yeah, and
absolutely.
it is easy. It is more secure. So that
Yeah,
is
like I was
where
saying, yeah, there's just one thing to deal with, and it's much more simpler, and it will just seem like, it'll just blend in with the other AWS stuff which you typically do. So definitely AWS IAM is something you should definitely look at for such kind of use cases. This sounds great. Megha. But I want to make sure. I want to just make sure if there are any nuances out there, right? Any caveats to this which you think the developers out there should know? I mean, we are dealing with security here, right? Sensitive stuff. So do you want to call something out here, just in case?
So I would just say that first of all, the drivers would take the access token and secret and the key, but it will not pass it to the MongoDB Atlas. And MongoDB Atlas actually authenticates using the ARN of the Lambda function. For this case, we'll be demoing AWS Lambda, a Node.js application deployed on AWS Lambda, and we will be taking the ARN for the IAM role, and that is how MongoDB authenticates in the background. And
Mhm.
apart from database access, we should also be looking at network access,
Oh, yes.
some kind of peering or private link, but we will talk
Right.
about that more in our future sessions. So these are the
Yeah.
caveats I would like to talk about. And
You
I
can't
think
get there if the
Abhishek,
door is not open, right? The networking part, obviously.
yeah, yeah. Yes,
Right.
absolutely. So, Abhishek, you want to talk more about AWS IAM because if someone in the audience is not aware what is IAM, what is how
Yeah.
managed identities are taken care in AWS, so if you can throw some light on that.
And before that, I wonder if
Yeah.
we could pause briefly to answer this question. I think it's a
Yeah.
good one.
Yeah.
Is the authentication we're talking about now, IAM, available now through drivers?
Yes, all the language drivers, 12 language drivers. So it's available on everything, on all 12 languages drivers we have.
Okay, great.
Yeah, it
And
works
we're going
with
to talk
Go
a
for
little bit
sure.
more about the
Yeah.
details. We're going to talk more about the details of how to implement this, right?
So I'll
Precisely.
show that. I'll show that.
Precisely.
It will be
And
very
you know what?
easy. Yeah.
Yeah. And you
It
know
will
what,
be
Megha? I think it'll be good for us to jump straight into the demo, and before I go into some of the other mechanics and aspects, I think that'll be cool. People are reaching to see this in action. I think we have warmed them
absolutely.
up enough. What do you think?
Absolutely. And before I jump into the demo, LinkedIn user, so I'll show you where I can get the code from. Like from the MongoDB Atlas GUI, we can simply copy the code. And you can choose your language, and then you can get the code, helper code for it to get started. Okay.
Yeah, that's we want
Yeah.
that's something which we all I'm sure they want to look at it. So yeah, here we
Yes.
go.
Yes.
Awesome.
So here we go. So some of my
So
credentials
the screen looks great to me, Megha. I can see it
Yeah.
fine. I'm just wondering if you're watching this and you're thinking it's too small or you can't see it. Let us know in the comments. I'd love to hear if you guys can see the screen. Okay, thanks, Megha. Go ahead.
Yeah. So this was my earlier way of authenticating to MongoDB Atlas. I was just I have a cluster setup where I will take you in a bit, but first I wanted to show you the Lambda function wherein I have deployed a Node.js application, and this was my earlier way wherein I was doing a username password kind of Scramsha authentication, and that is where I thought, okay, now let me do AWS IAM, and here you can see how I got the access key secret tokens just from my environment variables from AWS Lambda, and now my MongoDB connection string has changed to something like this. I'm passing in the access key and secret and also the token. So if you can see, I'm also encoding these and the token keeps rotating periodically. So
Okay, so
that
you're including a .env file or something in your code base, and that's
no,
where.
there is no .env file. It comes automatically from the environment variables of AWS Lambda, and that
Okay.
is where this is so easy to do it. And
Okay.
I don't even the token keeps rotating; it automatically handles that. That is where it is so easy. And now I'll take you to my cluster, which is deployed on AWS. And I was talking about how to connect it, right? So we can connect it using the connect button, and someone was asking me how did I get the code. So for example, this is Node.js, and I've selected the version, so I can even go like this and view full code example. So it will give me the connection string as well as the code which we can use to get started. So that is how I will get the code. And someone was asking me which all languages. So these are all the languages, right? PHP, Python, Java, everything you ask LinkedIn users. So everything is there. For example, if I select Python, it will show me AWS IAM, how to connect with AWS IAM, the connection string, as well as the code. And let's say if you want to use the Scramsha way, so you will have Scramsha. If you have some a user added with X509 or LDAP, then they will show, it will show you 3 or 4, like those options as well. So I'll show you where to add that.
Nice. I wish I
Yeah.
should have. I mean, I would have paid more attention to this. It would have saved me time. I didn't. I apologize.
Yeah.
Read the docs, like they say, and this is right there. So this is
It is
very
so easy.
convenient.
And yeah,
Yeah,
if someone wants to experiment, write the code on their own, so they can just
exactly.
go with the connection string and copy
Mhm.
it and
Yes.
write the code themselves. So that
Right.
is how it's very easy to connect to a cluster. But I'll take a step back. Like how did I created that cluster, and how did I get this data? Like for this example, I'll be focusing on this. Can you see
We can
this
see. Yeah.
this database and
Mhm.
this collection? So it all comes with the sample data set in Atlas. So I just created a cluster, and with that, I also did something like a load sample data set. So within a few minutes, my cluster was up and running, and it also had some sample data set to get started with, get experiment with. I'll show you that. So I showed you how to connect to a cluster. I showed you where to see the collections, but I will show you how to create a cluster. So that is how we can create a cluster. And we have three types, wherein one is shared. So you can have your shared cluster. So let's say you are starting for experimentation or for your own demos or POCs, just exploring out Atlas. So you can start with a shared one and just go to AWS or any popular cloud choice of your of your choice, and select from the 100 plus regions, because these three cloud offerings have 100 plus regions. So you can choose the region where you want to host your database, or wherever your AWS offerings are, so that the latency is minimum when your service tries to access data from the database. And
Can I
then you can choose the cluster tier. Yeah.
can I
And
interrupt? Can I interrupt
yes,
really
yes,
briefly? So
yes,
I see that it says free at the bottom, and
right.
M0 is the size. Can we do
Yes,
everything we're talking about in terms of the integration between AWS IAM on the free tier? And is that
yes.
time boxed? Does that run out? Do I have to give my credit card?
No, you never have to. That's a very good point, Michael. So we don't have to add any credit card information ever. And AWS IAM can be done with the M0 sandbox, and it's free forever. Since I already have one cluster, which is M0, that is why it is not giving me that option. Otherwise, I can very well create the free forever cluster. So it's like per project, you can create one M0. So if you have multiple projects, you can create multiple free clusters as well, and no credit card information is required.
Sweet.
And then you can just go to create cluster. And with M0, there is no backup. But if you go for a little higher tier, then you will get backup options as well. However, it comes with replica set by default. So I'll show you that as well. It comes with a primary and two secondary replica set by default, even if it's a M0 cluster. And the other two options which I was talking about, so if you have production workloads, you might want to choose dedicated. And dedicated has a plus wherein we can choose multi cloud as well. For example, from the popular cloud offerings, we can choose AWS and some other cloud offerings as well, and some other regions as well. So this makes migration, or choosing from 100 plus regions and different kind of cloud offerings possible. So that is where, and then we can choose minimum and maximum tier and kind of sharding. Even we can choose sharding by default. So these are the additional settings we can even turn on sharding. So that is where dedicated comes in. And if you have invariant traffic and the world is any which way is moving towards serverless, so we have a serverless database offering as well. Again, you can choose the cloud of your choice and then the region, and then you can choose other options and get started. So I'll cancel this for now, but you can click on create instance in whatever way you want to create it.
Yeah.
And then
I just
I'll
want to
show you.
interrupt you one more time. So
Yes, Mike.
you talked about 3 possible deployments types of MongoDB instances in
Yes.
the cloud. You talked about
Right.
shared, dedicated, and serverless. There might
Sure.
be a trivia question coming up around this, so pay attention, folks.
Absolutely. So it's I'll reiterate for the folks who want to answer the trivia question. So it's shared, dedicated, and serverless. And I was saying, right, I have a M0 cluster somewhere. So it's my M0 cluster, and I can show you that it has replica sets. See, primary, secondary, secondary. So as promised, even the free cluster has the replica set.
Nice.
And I'll go back to my cluster where I was showing you how to connect and browse collections. And I just wanted to tell you, once you create the cluster, you can go to this ellipsis and just go to load sample data set. And it'll load a sample data set for you to get started within a few minutes. So that is how it's that easy to create a cluster, get started with the sample data set, and it's free forever, no credit card information required. So as I showed you, I'll be working with sample Mflix DB and the movies collection, which I was showing you. So what I was trying to do is connect through to my database using the connection secrets and access key and token, which I got from the environment variable, and using AWS IAM, and then getting some data. So I already made a gateway wherein I can get my data. So let's say I'll just refresh this and I'll get this data. For this demo, I did not do much on the UI and just made a simple API gateway. So I'm getting some movie data already up and running, but I'll show you how I did it, because as I was telling you, the drivers are not going to send the access key, secret, and token to the MongoDB Atlas. So I'll
Just going to
minimize the
pause you there for a second, Megha. So you're telling me the architecture right now is so there's an Amazon API gateway, and we have a Lambda function and MongoDB Atlas cluster in the
Yes.
backend. All right.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Absolutely. This is the
perfect.
API
Thank you.
gateway, which I was using to show that I can fetch the data from my API. And this is the Node.js function, which is acting as my backend, and it is connecting to Atlas, MongoDB Atlas, using the AWS IAM. So how I added that is, if we go to this configuration, please note that I went to, okay, I have to reload, I guess. 1 minute.
Oh, it should be fine.
Yeah. I'll just go to my management console, and basically I want to show how I fetch the ARN for the role I have for my Lambda function. So whenever we create a Lambda function, we'll get a ARN created for the role we are using to authenticate our managed identity in AWS. And I'll just go to my Lambda function, and I'll show you where in configuration we can get that. So this is my demo function which I created for the purpose of this demo, and we can just go to configuration and the permissions, and this is the role which got created for my AWS IAM. And I go here in the AWS IAM role, and then I can just copy the ARN which it gives me. Can you see the ARN, or I need to increase the size?
Really, really tiny. There you go.
Yes.
It's all
Is it better now?
fine either way. It's going to be different to different folks, but it doesn't matter. Yeah, the fact is that when you open the role, the ARN is there and something which you can copy and do something. Right? Megha is going to show that.
Yes. So I think now is it visible? Now I think it should be visible. So we can just copy this ARN, and this is ARN pertaining to my role, my AWS IAM, my managed identity on AWS, and then I just go back to my database, and I go to this database tab, and I was talking about this cluster, right? So what I can do is I can just go to database access. On the left, we have this database access option. And in the database access, I've already added my ARN, but I'll show you. Like I was talking about, right? Even the code options in the connect screen will change. Like, for example, if you add this AWS IAM, and it will give you two types,
Yeah.
IAM user and IAM role. So we can select the IAM role, and I can just copy in whatever I copied, and then I can add what is the access kind I want to. I can use a Atlas admin or read and write or only read. And I can also add some kind of predefined custom roles. So wherein we can get role-based access as well. So for this demo, I had added the read and write only, read and write to any database. And I did not select any other additional permissions. But and then that is
So
what we do, and we can add the user. Yeah.
Just to be clear, Megha, for our audience, right? So the built-in roles which you just selected and the
Yes.
IAM role, they are two different entities, right?
Two
So the
different
IAM role is of course for AWS IAM, and the built-in
Yes.
role is specific to MongoDB Atlas and the
Okay.
fine-grained permissions. That's right. Yeah, just want to call that out, just to make sure there's no confusion out there.
Sure.
Awesome.
And thank you for pointing that out, because a lot of folks could confuse that, okay, IAM role is again role-based access.
it's all
This is also a role-based access. So this is like additional security. So even if you are authenticated using IAM role or user, you have to have, if you don't have the access to some kind of data, you will not be able to access
so
it.
this is more of authorization,
Absolutely.
behind the
This is-
perimeter security of the
Yes.
authentication part. Makes sense.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
Thank you.
So then we can go and add the user. And for now, I'm canceling it. And this is my user wherein I have added that role. And if I, let's say, add users like password or certificate or anything like LDAP, so what will happen is when I go to the database tab, I can even show those options in my drivers. So for example, I'm seeing only two kind of options. If I have LDAP and X509 as well, so it will come and it will give you the few full code sample or just the connection string you have to use. So that is how Atlas makes the job easier for developers, and that is why it is called the complete developer data platform. And that is how the function is basically connecting to my MongoDB Atlas. I'll show you the code. So basically, that is how. So what happens is I'm using this connection string differently, which is different from my Scrum SHA, and then I'm also adding the ARN on the Atlas end and giving some more, permissions like authorization, and after that, it works end to end,
Alright.
and that is how I can fetch my data.
Right. I think if you go back there, Megha, I just want to call out one thing. Perhaps repeat something. Like if you go back to the Lambda function there again, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
The part around, if you can just scroll to the extreme left. I think yes, that's right.
Yes.
So the encode URI component, just for our developer audience out there, right? If you go ahead, try the thing, perhaps in a different language, right? Node.js, Go, Java. I mean, I did it with Go, it doesn't matter.
Yes.
But there is going to be an equivalent in your programming language. So this is something which you cannot ignore, because the secret keys, the access tokens, they have certain characters in them. You need to encode them, right? So make sure you use the equivalent, perhaps it's in your standard library, maybe it's not, depends on your programming language. So for Go, I pulled in something externally. So sorry, Michael, go ahead.
That's a very good point. Yeah, Michael is also trying to say. Yes, Michael.
Yeah, I wanted to ask a question now, because obviously Lambda functions are in the AWS ecosystem.
Right.
Because it's running in that ecosystem, it's provided the environment. The token, the access key, and the session token are all part of your environment. What if I wanted to run an application outside that is not Lambda?
Okay, so that application is something like EC2 or ECS or something. It's on AWS Fargate, and also we can use it.
This applies. This applies. This is definitely something which I wanted to talk about and call out, that this is just not about Lambda. I mean, obviously, so there's this entire concept of the role, we associate it with the MongoDB Atlas database, we configure that in Lambda in this case, and in this case, we just happen to use environment variables. And this was a demo, obviously, so we didn't pull in, other AWS services like S3 and whatnot. But obviously, you could, if you wanted to have, say, S3, just as an example, you could do that and update the Lambda execution role to add the required permissions and get your job done, right? Now, coming to the part where you want to work with additional AWS compute services, right? Platforms. So before I actually talk about that, I want to just take a step back and make sure you understand the context here, right? Just to provide you a better picture here. So today, if you're already an AWS developer, perhaps you use the AWS SDK within your Lambda functions or elsewhere to connect to all these native AWS services. And you don't actually need to do anything. You don't need to read from environment variables. So this is your situation right now. So for example, even in Lambda, you don't have to do anything special if you were to perhaps use an AWS SDK to connect with native AWS services. But that's not the case when you're using MongoDB Atlas. So in this case, you are having to deal with the parts where you read from AWS environment variables. Now, Megha showed you AWS Lambda, but perhaps you have a containerized workload on ECS, or maybe you have an application running in a Kubernetes cluster in EKS. So you have to think about that. So I want to clarify that, and thanks, Michael, for bringing this up anyway, that the process actually works differently in each of these cases, say EKS, ECS, or perhaps a vanilla EC2 instance. So for instance, with ECS, you'll have to obviously associate that IAM role with the ECS task definition, right? In that case, which you would do with any ECS workload. But there is this additional set of steps which you'll have to actually care about to extract the secret key, the secret access key, and the session token. So that is going to differ slightly from platform to platform. So it's not just going to be, hey, I read it from environment variables and I'm done. So ECS, it's going to be a little different. For EKS, for the Kubernetes part, you will have to use something called IRSA. If you're already using, familiar with EKS, it's IAM roles for service accounts. So the same IAM role, the one which is configured within MongoDB Atlas, you'll have to associate that with your EKS pod, right? And then you have to assume the role programmatically. So there are some nuances here. There is some additional part which you'll have to do on your end as well. So yeah, again, like I said, thanks, Michael, for calling that out, because it is very, very important for you as a developer to understand that part, because again, you are using something outside the realm of your usual AWS SDKs and whatnot. So something to be mindful about for sure, folks. Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah, and apart from that, I would like to add that we also should be doing some kind of network authorization and authentication on top of this to make it even more secure. And if the audience demands, we would like to cover the peering as well as your AWS private link in our network access.
Yeah. I think just shout it out. What do you want to, what do you want us to focus on? Of course, we have a few things, right? Like Megha pointed out, the network aspect, access aspects are very, very important as well. Like I said earlier, right? You're standing at the door. If it's not open, can't do anything. Of course, so Megha, the point is like, the IP access list, right? So right now, how did you, manage to do this without actually?
Now we had two options. Either we add the subnet range, or we added allow access from anywhere. So that's a bad way to do it. So that is why peering is very, very important. So peering or the private endpoint, like AWS private link, is something which we should do for production.
Absolutely. Otherwise,
adding the subnet range is very difficult. We have to go for the region. So if it's one region, it's doable, but adding the subnet range, if the app is in multi-region, it becomes difficult and very difficult.
I think it will be good to hear from the audience, like I was saying earlier. What are they interested in? Are you interested in different AWS platforms, perhaps, right? And how you can integrate MongoDB Atlas with them, perhaps EKS or ECS, and of course you would want to learn about the network access. So let us know.
Well, I personally, I'm curious about how. So when I think about deploying an application, I know where I'm going to be developing from. I may not know where my colleagues are developing from. I may not know where IP range is. I may not know where the application is going to be running from. But if I've got a unified platform, I'm leveraging AWS. choosing from all of the available services. I'm deploying my application inside the AWS platform. I know that I have a solution, and I don't have to guess at all the IP ranges, but I would love to hear how that works, providing secure access between the application and the database and leveraging IAM.
Right.
Absolutely.
So we can do a series of these live streams, like where we can cover the VPC peering as well as the AWS private. Yeah,
there's lots to cover, a lot of options which we have. This could go in many directions, right? So perhaps you could come in from a security perspective or app dev perspective. Up to you.
Absolutely. And if people want to see more on these features as well, so we can create some demos wherein we can use these features as well, like triggers or data federation or search.
Okay, so that's a call out to you folks watching the stream. Let us know what you want to see. In the meantime, do you think we should take a break and maybe let's ask a trivia question?
Right.
Yeah, folks might be waiting for that.
Are you ready for a trivia question? Who wants to win some swag? Let me pull up my trivia question.
Can I participate?
You can. Well, you already get a T-shirt. Guests automatically get a T-shirt. So, all right, let me share my screen here. All right.
Okay, I'll stop.
Hang on. Yep. Okay, share screen. Google Slides. Is this it? All right, the first question for you in the audience. If you're watching this, you can win a T-shirt. Read the question carefully. Which? Oh, I think that's a mistype. But which AWS IAM types are supported by MongoDB Atlas? IAM user, IAM role, both, or none? This is a tricky one. Be careful. Don't answer too quickly.
Take your time.
All right, we're going to choose someone who answers the question at random. And you'll need to be able to contact me on YouTube or LinkedIn, and I'll need to be able to get a hold of you. I might send you a connection request. Okay, so I'm going to stop.
I see a lot of right answers.
I see a lot of right answers. I think this question might have been too easy. Right, I'm going to star two of these. We'll be in touch.
Okay. I thought there are a lot of right answers because the explanation was quite good. So I took it that way.
Take credit where credit's due. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for playing along, folks. Watch out for that connection request coming from me to let you know you've won a MongoDB podcast T-shirt. So let's get back into the content. Let's see. All right. So I'll turn it back over to you, Megha. Where are we going to go from here? What are we going to talk about?
I think we can just hear from audience, like what they want to see next. So we can cover that. If is it VPC peering or the private link, how to secure the app more, or if they want the integration with other kind of AWS offerings, or something like a polyglot.
Maybe something else. Who knows, right?
Yeah, and if they want to see something more on Atlas, that is also.
And Megha demoed this with Node.js. Perhaps you are interested in other programming languages. So this is the time. I think we can utilize this time to get some feedback from the audience. And I think there are some good questions as well. I see a lot of folks answering right here. They have shared it. Nice. Good. Lots of answers coming in. And I saw viewers from all over. I saw viewers from Serbia, from Nigeria, of course, from India. A lot of folks from India. I see. So this is nice.
I love that.
Lovely to see that. Yes.
All right. Yes. I'm going to be distracted for a minute while I get the winners.
Of course.
So bear with me.
So who is the lucky one?
Yeah. I love giving away swag. Everybody loves a good T-shirt, and they're so well.
Abhishek, you can take this one. If we have a load balancer and EC2 running behind it, whether we should give ARN of load balancer or EC2.
Okay, so this is all right. So this is the ARN of the role which we were talking about. So this is, you don't have to worry about the platform itself. We are not talking about the infrastructure or compute components here. same applies to Lambda, right? So we are not concerned about load balancer or EC2 or Lambda, perhaps. This is the IAM role, and the ARN of the IAM role is what you should be worried about. You should configure that in MongoDB Atlas cluster, and of course, the compute platform of your choice. In this case, it was the AWS Lambda execution role. If you were to, like I was saying earlier, perhaps you're using ECS, so you would attach the same IAM role ARN to your ECS task definition, and so on and so forth. So yeah, just to clarify, nothing to do with the ARN of your infrastructure component. It's really the ARN of the IAM role, which you would have been using anyway, irrespective of MongoDB, to be honest with you, like I was saying earlier, right? Perhaps you're building it within your AWS infrastructure. You would be using an IAM role anyway for your authentication and authorization and fine get permission. So you just extend that to MongoDB Atlas, configure it there, configure it within your AWS infrastructure as well. Let me know if that's not clear, but I'm happy to reiterate based on your feedback.
Even if you go by the code principles, right? The service which is talking to the database, that will require to authenticate. So that is where load balancer ARN role will not come into picture. It will be the service.
That's right. Yeah. And the IAM role itself, it's sort of a flexible entity, right? You can attach it with multiple components. In this case, they happen to be, of course, your EC2 instances or your Lambda functions and things of that nature. So that's the way it works.
All right. Are there any other questions from the audience, folks? If you're watching, if you're wondering how to implement this, how you want to improve the efficiency and security of your applications, any questions are welcome. Oh, here's one.
Someone is,
How can Sachin start learning?
MongoDB University, learn.mongodb.com.
Yes. And there's another link that you just gave me. I'm going to put that up. There's more information available here. That's a long URL, but we'll leave it up on the screen for a couple of seconds so you can check that out. That's part of the MongoDB documentation. Hey, shout out to the documentation team at MongoDB. These guys are amazing. There's just so much information in the docs. So mongodb.com/docs/atlas/security/passwordless-authentication.
Yeah. So.
Okay. Yeah, some of the specifics around the AWS IAM stuff is listed in that link right there. So you will definitely find that handy in terms of how to go about things. And
here's another question that was asked again earlier. Is this included in the community distribution? So unfortunately, we're talking about integrating MongoDB Atlas, which is our online database as a service. So integration with Atlas is, it's not part of the community distribution. So you won't be able to leverage IAM authentication for your self-hosted community MongoDB instance. Hope that answers the question.
Yeah. And then someone is asking me, is there any documents for MongoDB Atlas? So you can go to learn.mongodb.com, as well as Michael will share a link for Atlas documentation as well.
Yes. All right, let's see. Let's get that in there. I need to create the banner. You guys are putting me to work over here.
It's the audience. That's a good thing, right?
The audience, it's great.
Yes.
Okay. All right, here we go. This is the link for MongoDB Atlas documentation. So some great stuff available at mongodb.com/docs. And then you're going to be specifically looking at the MongoDB Atlas service documentation if you append Atlas to that link. All right. There's another super important link that I want to share with everybody. This one is so important. Podcast 50. Does anybody know what that is? That is a coupon code for MongoDB.local. MongoDB.local is coming to New York City. It's going to be June 22nd in New York City. If you're in and around New York and you want to go in person to MongoDB.local, check out all of the latest product updates, chat with experts, ask your questions, maybe appear on the MongoDB podcast, which is going to be a part of that event. We're going to have a booth set up. We'll be doing interviews all day. MongoDB.local New York City. jot down the code podcast50. You're going to get 50% off the early bird pricing, which is super cheap, high value, low cost. And then let's see. What are we forgetting? Anything else you want to touch on with IAM security?
Nope, nothing comes to mind as of now. There, of course, I mean, like we are saying, would love to hear from the audience, right, Megha? Anything else off the top of your head you want to?
No, I think someone asked about what is the best tool for DB monitoring. Are we Subramanya. So basically, we have monitoring tab in Atlas itself. So you have a performance advisor, and you have so much. If you want, I can share my screen for a few seconds, and I can show you. So I'll share my screen. And you can see this, like I had showed you database, right? So we have this connect tab, which we went to connect to Atlas using different ways. And then I only went to the drivers for now for this demo, and then browse collections. But this tab, this button, view monitoring, so you can even do monitoring. So you have the metrics, you have performance advisor, profiler. So you have so much, and you have the documentation as well as the university. Or you can hit us up, me or Michael or my team, anyone from my team, to understand more on these. And we have YouTube channel as well, MongoDB YouTube, so you can find the resources there.
Nice.
Great. Okay, so there's a call out, and I want to recognize Nick Raboy, our very own Nick Raboy, developer advocate, is he's staffing the moderation on LinkedIn. I'm wondering if you could put that link to the New York City.local event. It's mongodb.com/events/mongodb-local/NYC. It's a long one. Hoping we can put that in the comments in LinkedIn. And it looks like we got another question from Nick. Might be out of scope for this stream, but anyway, you can touch on the performance analyzers in Atlas.
Okay. I can start sharing, and I can try to talk about that for a bit. Okay. Is my screen visible? So I think performance advisors, we can use this to see like what kind of indexes we should create or drop or improve. It's if you have worked on SQL, it is similar to your execution plans journey, and you can do a lot here. And I think Michael, you can add if I'm missing out something. I have no demo ready to show this today, but yeah, it's like it will suggest you a lot of things. And
I
we
love
can
it.
visit the provider.
I love the performance advisor because you often don't know what the use patterns are going to be for your application.
Yes.
And you can make assumptions and you can deploy your application.
Absolutely.
But MongoDB Atlas is going to continue to analyze all of the queries that come in against your database. And it's looking at them. And it's not only looking at the performance and counting the numbers and giving you charts, but it's also looking at utilization of the database in alignment with best practices and worst practices. So if you're over leveraging indexes, it's going to know. If you're hitting a query that's not covered by an index, it's going to know. If you're deep nesting arrays, unbounded arrays in a document structure, it's going to know, and it's going to make these recommendations for you to improve the performance of your app. So amazing capability in the performance advisor.
Yeah.
I like the part about worst practices. Sometimes you've got to know what not to do, right?
Right. So sometimes you have to drop the indexes as well. Yes.
Yeah. So I hope this was helpful for everybody. We're right at 50 minutes. Is there anything else that you'd like to share before we wrap the stream? Abhishek, where can people get a hold of you?
LinkedIn,
Are you on
Twitter?
LinkedIn? Okay.
Yeah, I am. I can drop in. Yeah, sure thing. Just give me a second.
Okay. Yeah, no worries. No worries.
And Michael, you can also share the GitHub repository if someone would like to check out the code. Yeah.
Oh, is that in the? Did you share that in the private chat?
Yes. Yes. I did.
I see it.
I'll share it. Yeah.
Okay, let's do that. Yeah, people are going to want the GitHub repo. Let's put that in a banner and share that.
Yes.
All right. So MongoDB-developer, that's the developer advocate repo, or org rather. And then the repo is Node.js-AWS-Lambda-IAM. That's a long one. Maybe if Nick can drop that in the chat or the comments. Yeah.
Nick, can you copy this to the?
We're putting Nick on the spot. We put you on the spot. Now we're going to put Nick on the spot.
Yeah, Nick, you have to do some work. Now you copy this and put in the comments. He's saying, don't worry if I put you on the spot.
Everyone likes copy paste, man. We are all developers. We love copy paste, right? I don't care about ChatGPT. We still love copy paste, right? Good old Stack Overflow times.
Right?
Nick basically want you to copy the link. Yeah, Michael, go ahead.
Yeah. We want you to copy the link that's on the screen and put it in the comments if you wouldn't mind. GitHub.com/MongoDB-developer/Node.js-AWS-Lambda-IAM. There he is. He's got it. All right, he did it.
Yeah, thank you, Nick.
All right. I think we're ready to go. Thanks, everybody. This has been a great, informative discussion. Abhishek, thanks so much. I hope we get to work together again in the future. Megha, awesome job putting this content together. And I hope it's really, I love to see what the impact of this is on the developer community, improving security, improving efficiency. Any final words, Megha, before we wrap?
Sure. I am actually looking for people to comment on the post or in my LinkedIn DMs or wherever they can reach me to see what they want me to cover or us to cover next. So that is where I'm looking forward to those comments from everyone.
Yeah. We are already planning the future, like we were already discussing this. Like, what next, Megha? What next? So definitely, we are very, very keen to hear from you. Yeah,
different languages, offerings.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to. Yeah,
full-fledged example or network peering and private link first. Yeah.
Yes. Reach out to us, either of us.
Good stuff. So I'm going to end the broadcast now, but you guys stick around. We got to wrap up when we're done. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day. Thank you for joining.
Have a good one.
Yeah.